Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Skull Session Recruiting Podcast presented by BuckeyeHuddle.com. I'm Marc Givler. We have Kevin Noon here with me. Signing day capsules continue here. Class of 2023 signing today with the Buckeyes. Another great recruiting class for Ohio State. We're going to talk about one of the earliest guys who was in this class here, and that is Cedrick Hawkins, safety out of Cocoa, Florida. Committed on New Year's Day, almost a year ago. Was an early, again, one of the earliest guys. I think only Josh Padilla was in this class longer than Cedrick Hawkins. 4-star prospect, another South Florida Express kid. So obviously the theme of South Florida Express is strong in this class. Kevin, we actually got to go down and spend some time with Cedrick Hawkins. Just your impressions of him and what Ohio State's getting, but also just getting off the field too, because we got to spend a lot of time with him when we were down there.
Yeah, Cedrick impressed me when I talked with some people from South Florida Express. I mean, he's up in Cocoa, and he would still not only come down just for games for South Florida Express, but he'd come down for practice. And for those of you that are not familiar with the geography and the layout of the state of Florida, you got the I-4 corridor that goes, Tampa, Orlando, and then really kind of just comes out into Cocoa, if we're honest. And so he's coming all the way down the Atlantic side to go down to South Florida to be able to do these practices. So, a really driven kid, listed at 6 foot, buck 75. I mean, he looks bigger in his uniform. I mean, he just seems to be a bigger guy. I mean, when we went down there for practice, he kind of led practice in a lot of ways. I mean, obviously there were the coaches there, but I mean, it was obvious he was the leader of the team. And it was not, maybe the most spirited practice in the world in terms of the entire team, but he was getting guys in the right positions and everything else. I mean, I think he's going to be somebody, especially in this Jim Knowles led defense, when you're playing three safeties. I think he's going to be somebody that's going to fill an obvious need. I mean, he's going to need some time to get into this Knowles defense and everything else. I mean, a lot of guys are like, oh, well, I played nickel in high school. Well, that doesn't necessarily, not all nickels are created the same. But I think that people are going to be very impressed with him. I mean, just he's got all the tools.
Yeah, and it was interesting because he, Florida guy commits early. What could go wrong there? I think a lot of people were, almost like, oh, we'll see if he signs. Well, he signed, and without really very, very, very little drama. But yeah, as the tape comes on here, really physical kid, really good tackler. Really likes to be physical, likes to come up and make plays. In run support, likes to come up and jump patterns and make those big interceptions. But I think he's a guy who could play a couple of the different safety spots for Ohio State, but I kind of view him as a bit of a Tanner McAllister type of player. So if you liked the year they got out of Tanner McAllister, I think you'll like Cedrick Hawkins. I think, with what they're bringing in, it's going to be interesting. They've brought in 3 safeties in this class. All are a little bit different to me, and I think Hawkins is maybe a bit of a blend of like what Jaden Bonsu and Malik Hartford are. Maybe not quite the athlete of Malik Hartford, but a good enough athlete in space. And then like Jaden Bonsu has some physicality to his game as well. So he's kind of a blend of the two other guys he's coming in with. It's going to be interesting. They need safeties. I would argue they need to hit the transfer portal for a safety this offseason, despite regardless of what Lathan Ransom decides to do. They're losing so much experience from that room, and numbers weren't particularly ideal anyway. And Jansen Dunn hits the portal, so I think, and Jalen Johnson. So I think they probably have to go portal as well. So that may give the guys like Hawkins some time here to develop, but again, I think, someone who does a lot of things well on the football field, just a guy who I think has the intelligence to learn different positions and kind of be a versatile player back there for Jim Knowles in the secondary. Again, I kind of quickly alluded to it earlier. the early Florida commitment, and obviously there's a history there at Cocoa. It was kind of under a different coaching staff, but the Bruce Judson thing that never happened, the Jamel Dean thing that very famously never happened. But they land this one. I think a lot of people again were rolling their eyes, like, oh, we'll see about this, but really a drama-free recruitment, Kevin.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you always expect at least a little something. And I think that there was a moment of where people thought maybe, oh, maybe they'll, kind of look around at some things, how do the numbers fit? I mean, how many safeties do they take? Because as you mentioned, there is going to be the necessity for safeties, and there were some other players that were still on the board. And it's like, well, if they get the right four guys, do they go to four? I mean, could they go to five? I mean, obviously where it's looking right now is it's going to be the three. um but no real drama, no real like, oh, we got to see where he's visiting, we got to see where, who he's talking to and everything else. He just put his head down and went about his business. And not necessarily the biggest guy on social media or anything like that. But you kind of welcome those after some of the guys that you end up getting to deal with, and just how things go from day to day, and you just don't know. And I think even the coaching staff has to sometimes wonder, well, I guess we'll know finally if we get that letter of intent faxed in. But that's not been the case for Cedrick Hawkins, and that's good. But again, somebody that's on the I-4 corridor, north of the I-4 corridor, probably not as much drama, though I do say that Jacksonville can sometimes be a little overly dramatic.
Yes, one day I'll have to do like a kind of like a heat map of the state of Florida, and like red will be the high drama area, and we'll go all the way down the color the color scheme and into the lowest drama. And I would agree. I think that area of the state is generally the lowest drama. That we've seen some stuff over the years in Jacksonville and in South Florida, of course, and even from time to time in the Tampa area. So, again, I want to reiterate here. I think really smart kid, really versatile kid, really good in run support. But athletic enough to play. He kind of plays a deep free safety for Coco, so he's kind of got some experience, kind of playing center field. But again, does remind me just with the intangibles and just kind of the sure tackling and kind of being where he's supposed to be of a Tanner McAllister. I think he's going to be more of that type of steadying force. He's not Malik Hooker, Von Bell, kind of these, explosive, freakish athletes. He's more, again, if you want a Tanner McAllister, even a Jordan Fuller, who, wasn't a, elite run and jump athlete, but can shows you what can happen at that position when you know where you're supposed to be, and you're there when you're supposed to be there. So that type of player for me. So really nice pickup here for Ohio State. And again, I think again, you tip your cap to him as early Florida commit, and not doing a whole lot of game playing at that point, kind of chilled out for a year. And I'm sure, like all these kids, you hear from other coaches, but never big drama here. And so I think a steady player, smart player on defense for the Buckeyes. That'll wrap this one up. Again, BuckeyeHuddle.com. Give us a try for $12.99 a month. If you don't want to do the annual will give you a price break, but tries for the next month. Peach Bowl coming up, everything else. A lot to talk about on there. A lot of stuff that we don't put on YouTube and on free outlets. So you can get a lot of cool stuff there. But for the capsules, those will also be on the front page of BuckeyeHuddle.com with some written stuff to go along with it, some analysis of the class. You can get all the videos also here on YouTube.com/BuckeyeHuddle. Or if you just want to listen, all the major podcast platforms should have this available. If you go to, I guess, probably search Buckeye Huddle podcast network will help you fast track you to get there. But thanks everyone for watching. Thanks everyone for listening, and we'll see you on the next one.